So this is considered podcast time.
Yeah.
So we're on it.
Let's do it.
So the people will have seen this.
Yeah. You put it in the outtakes.
Get in the outtakes. You know what this is?
No, doesn't get me high, does it?
We're going to find out. This is some Santo.
Okay.
So we'll get some sage going. We'll get some smoke. Just kind of clear the air, get some space going. This is really cool to me to talk to you because one, my nerves are a little bit because you are in the showbiz.
Yeah, but we're all faking it at the same time.
I know, but you're a better faker at this moment. So
we're all just playing a role like we talked about.
100%. So your confidence in the current, you get that in there?
Mm-hmm. So, a little sage.
Yeah, so that'll just set the space.
Sage steel.
That'll set the environment. And a guy who is really hard on me on setting the environment is Tommy LaStella.
Okay.
Former ball player and a cool dude. He was in the league for, I think, he was almost 10 years. He won a World Series with the Cubs. When the Cubs won that World Series.
Pitcher or what position?
He was an infielder.
Okay.
So Tommy.
Was he playing the hot corner or where was he located?
Everywhere. Second.
Utility.
Third. I think he made a lot of his name at second base.
Yeah.
But he was like a feisty hitter.
Okay. Yeah, just
I could be completely wrong on his
getting in the dish and just being a bulldog.
Yeah, he was just a bulldog, and he was like a little undersized, just like a tough dude, super cool teammate. That guy, he used to
be able to run it out, infield singles, grind it out.
No doubt, he's either gonna love or hate that I'm talking about this.
Yeah.
Which is good for both of us.
It's all press is good press, by the way.
No doubt. And so he always had this thing where he would say, he really introduced to me the importance of the environment if you're going to have conversation. Yeah. So you need to set the environment first because the conversation will be a byproduct of the space.
Okay.
And so we used to have these things where we would sit and talk after a game or before a game, whatever. And we used to, I can't remember if it was his rule or not, but we used to not look at each other.
Yeah.
And it was more so that we didn't interrupt each other's thought. Does that make sense?
Okay. So eye contact with Tommy wasn't a necessity. It was almost just look out in the distance, talk,
when
have
you were
your
thinking.
Thought. When you're thinking, okay.
Like if I'm talking to you, just chirping you and talking to you, hanging out like this, like great.
Yeah.
Staring at each other. But if I want to have a thought and I don't want your body language to disrupt my thought, then I'm allowed to get here. We set the environment so it's free.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to get here and I'm allowed to just like think through my thought.
Yeah.
And you're not going to interrupt me. And that was kind of one of our rules.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Little Leonard Skinner, free bird, baby. I like it.
So set the space with a little bit of smoke. We're buzzing. I haven't seen you in real time in a while, but as a Mount Rushmore guy.
Yes.
And one of the OGs, we've probably known each other for almost a decade then.
Yeah, I was thinking about it on my drive over as I was pulling up in my 96 Bronco, and it's not OJ, folks, for the folks wondering. It's a two-tone, it's a butter blue, it's white. But yeah, man, I was thinking as I was pulling up, stick shifting, getting into my train of thought, having an espresso coming over here, Harv, I was like, you know what, I gotta be, like we said before the show started, a Mount Rushmore like guy with your original project in Mindstrong. And I just think it was JVR, obviously, James Van Riemsdyk back in the day.
He was like the root. He was like the first seed.
He was. And then you had a guy just shortly after that in Mikey Riley, who was still playing with the Islanders. And I think I was maybe either 3 or 4. I mean, I was either hitting cleanup or I was, in that power stance or maybe the RBI position in 5th. But I was for sure, one of those original OGs ripping at that Prior Lake House, man. It was sweet. Remember that sauna, that tub you had us in? We'd overlook the lake.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'd go in the lake.
Yeah.
And I remember like one of the first sessions I rolled up to, we did the rower machine. And it was like I think it was 1,000 meters all out, but you had our mouths taped.
Yeah.
And then we went like right into the hot, into the cold. I'm like, am I going to black out? Like, do I really trust this guy? But I just went with it. And yeah, man, those workouts were epic.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When we can be honest about it now because of we're a few years removed from it, but you have to think those early days, those Mount Rushmore styles, you guys as the early seeds, I don't want to say it was like guinea pig-ish, but it was guinea pigging.
Yep.
I feel like I had a somewhat of an idea what I wanted to accomplish, but one of the things that I loved working with you guys, so much so, even to this day, of working with so many athletes. And maybe you can talk about this of the mind of a hockey player a little bit as well. But hockey players, from my vantage point, we're very open to different training styles. They're not rigid in their approach. They seem like curious people, and they're very supportive of each other. Meaning, like, you guys supported each other and chased edges from what you were curious about learning. It made my job really easy because I didn't have to. There was like a trust there, but it seemed like that was the community of hockey. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, and I think that group of innovative minds, and especially myself, being open to different things, and the guys we were working with, even guys like Derek Forbert, just ways to get better, whether it was, aligning your body better, whether it was regulating your breath. Like for me, the biggest thing I think you helped me with so much was getting out of the stressors within a game, being able to get back to the bench and then get back on the ice, ultimately to recover to a point where I felt fresh. Yeah. And we would do all those breath holds. And I really noticed my lung capacity skyrocket
it's wild.
Into the next season, where I was like, holy shit, man. Like, I'm not saying I'm Lance Armstrong over here or I'm on PEDs, but I felt unbelievable going over the bench. And I knew I had the confidence to recover. That was the biggest thing, is like I knew how to recover in a faster way, where it just became robotic and I could get over the boards. And whether I was tired, I wasn't thinking about I was tired, because I knew at that moment I could get back to base level and be okay. That was the biggest thing. I was like, wow, like, I'm such a better athlete now. Maybe I'm not playing in the NHL anymore, but I feel like I'm a way better player, and I knew I was.
Well, I think that's what clicked with me when I was playing, because when I was playing, baseball is such a thinking sport.
Yeah.
And so you're so fast in it, right? Like when you're, and tell me if I'm wrong, but when you're in hockey, you're in the shift, you're just reacting, right? Like you're just moving through things. And you have a few minutes on the bench, you can kind of like unwind, get that recovery type deal. In baseball, you can play right field for 2.5 hours and get one ball.
Yeah. You're over there, you're just like, what am I doing? Might as well smoke a cigarette.
Yeah. You're just like processing things for hours, right? And then you can strike out on 3 pitches in the first inning and you don't hit for 45 minutes.
Yep.
So you're just like ruminating on thoughts all the time. And I really struggled with that. I'm a cerebral dude. So I can get into positive and negative patterns of thought, right? And I can just kind of keep rolling and ruminating on things. And so that hurt me as a player. And when I got released in 15, I was really having performance anxiety before I even performed. And that was what kind of was the end of my career. But then where my mind switched in psychology was that I started viewing psychological training as physical training, being physiology. And that's where the experimentation took place. So it was like, if I can be oxygenated, if I can have a bigger lung capacity, if I can get oxygen into my body, if I can feel like I can control my state, upregulate, downregulate, and I can start with something that controls my nervous system, being the breathing. Well, then it was like, okay, well, there's my principle one. Yep. So if I have hockey player A or B and we're working together, it doesn't matter. Like the principle is the same. It's breathing. Now you might be different than Mikey, sure. Yep. And the methods need to change for sure, because you see the world differently, but the principle is the same, right?
Yep.
Now all of a sudden you take that principle and you infiltrate that principle with a ridiculous amount of stressors to try to get you to say what you just said, but not saying that for the reasoning to understand that. How do you understand yourself deeper, have a deeper awareness, because you've taped your mouth, done a row machine, and you've basically stressed your breathing?
Yeah.
And as you stress anything, it gets better, right? It's like we were talking about with the podcast. Like the more reps you do in this, you get better, but it's still stressful.
Yep.
There's still a stimulus to it. And so that was where I was coming from it then. I still come from that now, but my first initial thought of performance was, what are ways to hopefully healthy and productively stress your breathing?
Yep.
And doing it through sauna, cold. We did stuff on the sand a lot. But like I said, you guys were so fun to train because you were supportive of each other, but you were also like open-minded, and you are in your you. Like you have been curious about you since I met you.
Yeah.
And I think that aligns, especially when you're training people, when you're like new into training, you sort of, I think that like the stars aligned for some reason.
For sure. And the one thing that I would have wanted to, as I look back at it, and I've had these thoughts, and similar to you kind of unwind after you're done playing and figure out, maybe was it not getting a break, or was it probably something you could have done on your end? The one thing I wish we would have talked about, just going back to that, and it's growth and it doesn't really matter now, but I wanted to pick your brain on it a little bit. And just in terms of, there was always this thought of like not having the confidence that I should have had at the time, being a first round pick, Harv, and making a lineup to when I would, ultimately hopefully play years in the NHL. I don't know if my confidence was taken away from coaches. I don't know if it was a little bit of imposter syndrome in terms of not really feeling like I belonged in that locker room. I don't know what it was, because I lost my swag somewhere along the way. And I've been able to regain it in podcasting, but it was lost for about 3 or 4 years there. And I was never really to grasp it and kind of pull it in and hone it in to ultimately break through that barrier and get to the point of being an NHL player again. I don't know where it kind of zigged where I should have zagged, but I don't know if it was taken from just not making it, or years prior to in the minors, and coaches or player development staffs and the brass telling you, hey, you got to work on this, this, and this. Well, no, I actually do a lot of these things really well. You're just kind of keen in and focused on maybe 1 or 2 things I need to clean up. I don't know. It's something that I was always curious, because I always felt like I was missing something on that confidence level to kind of break through.
Well, my first thought to that is, you've obviously had how many years? When was the last time when did you get done playing?
2 years ago.
Okay, so you've had 2 years to process what you just said. So let's start with where you're at in the moment. What of that experience has brought you into the moment of where you have realigned your relationship with confidence? Let's start there.
I think for me, I was finished up in Switzerland, as you know, and I was thinking about, I was going through that head injury. I was thinking about life after hockey. I've always had this vision of being on TV, being in social media in terms of content, or doing different things in and around all sports, probably focusing on hockey, but just being, bringing that comedic approach that I had in the locker room, tying it in with some wittiness, and ultimately, knowing the game of hockey or other sport or wherever it may be, and creating art and being able to showcase it. And frankly, and bluntly putting it, not giving a fuck what anyone thought. I've always had that confidence from the locker room. I just was always curious why that didn't translate to the fullest on the ice. Like I would have it at times, but then it would kind of just, dismiss. And, I would kind of be on this roller coaster of highs and lows where I wouldn't be able to understand of like, okay, like, life goes on, we'll play another game. It was just kind of living and dying by the moment and kind of gripping your stick too tight, where what I'm doing now, I feel way more in flow. Right. You know what I mean? It feels way more natural than, say, a lot of the parts of my career in hockey.
Well, the reason why I asked that is because, and you give me your thoughts on this, but I think that largely for athletes specifically, we bucket so much of our life in that experience of being a hockey player, in your example. And I asked that because what of that lack of confidence, however you're creating the narrative, or the experience that you had with the NHL and your professional hockey career, would you want to change, knowing what you just said about yourself?
What I would want to change, just kind of just approach it like what I'm doing now, and just,
What I'm saying is, would you have confidence now and be able to let go now and being the person you are now if you hadn't had the experience of holding on to something so aggressively then?
Yeah, probably
That's
not.
what I'm talking
the awareness
about.
wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the hard part. This is the part that I don't have an answer to. I'm just curious about this. Why is it that hockey career now is perceived as that, other than the fact that if it weren't for hockey, that was the platform that gave you that level of awareness?
Yeah.
How can you not look at hockey as one of the greatest, if not most magical, beautiful experiences you've had in your life, because it taught you that?
100%. And like we were talking before, like I always knew, and I mentioned that just a couple minutes ago, I always wanted to do something within art of talking, or wherever it may be. I
think the hard part is just because we look at our sports careers as like the thing.
Yeah.
Like you look at the thing as, well, why didn't I get to do this when I was in hockey? Because you can see the things that come with that. Well, would you still be playing? Would you have gotten X amount of NHL All-Star appearances? Would you have won the cup? Would you have this amount of money? Would you be here? Would you be that? Would that coach have been proud of me?
Yeah.
With these things. And I think the reason why that is so difficult as an athlete is because you come up as an athlete as a child. So your development years and your perspective is being built around this structure.
Yeah.
And so you justify things as, what if I had this then? I would have been able to play like that. But I don't know. Maybe you can think on this with me. Why is it that we can't see through the concept of you are who you are now because you had an experience with lack of confidence and you needed that to get to where you are now?
Right. And what I was probably showing on the outside was a cover up for maybe how I was feeling actually on the inside, maybe overcompensating. And it's crazy too, Harv. Like, I tell people this all the time. Like, I actually don't miss playing at all. For a guy that played my whole life, like, they're like, do you miss, playing hockey? Does it, make you feel some type of way when you go to a game? Maybe a little bit. Probably because of what happened before the game, of just the camaraderie in the locker room and different things after the game, whether it be with the fellas at a party or at the bar. But I really don't truly miss playing the game. And I'm like really at peace with it. And it's, I don't know, it's a weird feeling, but I do feel like there's a lot of guys out there that, kind of hold on to that, whether it's right or wrong of, I wish I was still out there playing. My NHL days or college days. It's like, for me, man, it was a part of my life. It was a good run.
Right.
Probably wish it was longer. That's life. And, I truly feel like right now is the most in flow I've been doing anything. So it's been really exciting.
Well, did you have to kill off that character?
For sure. Yeah.
You have to grieve it.
Yeah. Cause we were talking before, like, we had that hike when I first retired. I reached out to you because you were back here for spring training, and I just got back from Switzerland, and we went on a hike to Pinnacle Peak just up the road. And I remember feeling like, I was telling you what I wanted to do, and I think it's aligned with what we're talking about now and what I'm doing. But at the same time, I was embarrassed. I wanted to hide. Yeah. I felt like I was unsuccessful. I was insecure, and all those emotions were coming out of me, and it was honestly really hard to deal with internally because I felt like I was just like always like on edge, or just, an uneasy feeling of being a failure. And, you were like, people are reaching out and I'm not reaching out back to them, or kind of just icing people. It was a strange time of feeling like, kind of like a worthless piece of shit.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I wonder if with your career, because help me work through this a little bit, because you were obviously incredibly successful through high school.
Yep.
You go to college, you guys killed it.
Yep.
You're a first round pick. You go to the NHL. When was like how old were you during the debut?
I would have been 22 or 23.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you're 22, 23 years old.
Yep.
I mean, I was in college until I was 23.
Yep.
I was a college student. You were playing in the National Hockey League.
A lot of people go to school for 7 years, Harv. They're called doctors.
100%. I missed the doctor part, but I did get a master's degree.
There you go.
But my point is that you think about how much life is hitting you at that age. And what I would be curious about is thinking about, you had mastered the ability to uphold that character and getting you to that first round. You had to hold all these things. And maybe that wasn't what deep down you were seeking. Maybe that wasn't your pit stop. That wasn't your checkpoint. That wasn't your Hall of Fame, if you will. And in order to get to the place you're at now, you needed to be a first round pick and go to the NHL at 22. And it was life needed to say, here, deal with this.
Yeah.
Right. And you had to expose yourself through that and work yourself through it. And I think that you did that marvelously, but I would imagine trying to do that in real time was nerve-wracking. And if I were to peel into it, I would imagine that's where the confidence of how much of you do you think you were being when you were a first round pick, 22-year-old, 23-year-old national hockey player playing under the bright lights in an arena? How much of you do you think you were at that moment?
Yeah, I think just scratching the surface,
right?
To be honest, and trying to find my way and survive, and basically become something that you're supposed to be. This NHL player, top four defenseman. Everything's based on potential. It's not actually what you are. It's all potential. That's the crazy thing. So I think
And it's the world's potential as well.
right. And
It's what the world wanted from you.
yes. And it's what, all these people are just looking at you like, you're supposed to be this, this, and that. And I definitely did want that at the time.
Right.
But you know what? Even going back to those days, it always felt like there was something more to me, something more in the art. And I think I really hung on to it and tried to ride it out as long as I could. And, even going over to Europe and Helsinki, Finland, a place you've been, a magical place.
Beautiful place.
I love my experience there. But even those games I was playing there and even into Switzerland, it's kind of like that Sugarland song. There's got to be something more. You know what I mean? It's just like I'm looking around. I'm like, I think I can contribute in a different way, in a unique way, connecting people, doing different things, making people laugh. I just think, I want to be able to do that on a bigger scale and, not only in hockey, but to the world. And that's what really made sense in my head and still does.
And that's beautiful, man. As your friend, beautiful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an unbelievable, because I think the thing that makes that so fascinating is, like I said, you can become imprisoned by your success. And I think that happens a lot in professional sports, is that even if you would have been, what if you would have been wildly successful and still been playing and been locked into a 5-year contract right now?
I know. Would I feel empty?
Right.
There would be definitely a part of me that felt that way. Now, on the 15th and the 30th of the month, when I'm seeing, $500,000 coming to my checking account, I could justify it, but there still would be that part missing 100%.
Well, and I think that's just the difficult part that we all have to wrap our heads around, is that we don't know what this is. You can have so much success, and that could have landed with you, and you could have been stuck in that game for another 10 more years, and you have lost 10 years in what you're doing right now.
Exactly.
And so and that's where I guess I'm going back to the original question of where was my confidence then? I just think it's hard, because I want to say the same thing. I want to say the same thing about myself. Like, I was talented enough. I had a little bit of stints there where I really thought I was going to make it. And then I had some injuries. I battled back to come back from the injuries, and I went as hard as I possibly could. And at the end of the year, at the end of my career, I ran myself into the ground, and I ended up destroying my mind and my body, and I could no longer perform. Mm-hmm. And if I could go back in time and talk to that person, I would tell that person to slow down or chill out or let go and do these things. And I maybe could have made it, hypothetically, right? But the point is, like, if I don't have that explosion or experience in my life, I don't spend the last 10 years trying to form practices and philosophies around holistic health. And now all of a sudden I've just coached in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And I was able to do certain things. And now for you, it's just a similar concept in a different role. It's like you were more than that role, but you were so successful in that role that you felt like you had to uphold that identity. And that becomes so stressful. Yep. And if you're not you in the moment, then you're not going to feel confident.
The thing is you talk about the explosion, and I think I had a similar blow up, or a few of them, where your mind and your body crashes and you're burnt out.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that sport taught me was don't rush the art. And now I find myself being able to stay in the middle of my head more. And I remember you told me, like, the middle of your head is like a river, right? You got to keep yourself and navigate through that river. And I've always gone back to that, but now it resonates, so much getting out of sport, where it's like, I don't know why. I think it's because of how, fast paced professional sports are, how, you got to make it, and then you got to make a career. It's like always just on the go, go, go. But now I'm able to, like, not rush the art, just let the art be and continue to get better and perfect it, or work on your craft to ultimately, hone in your skill. And I think, whether it's, I'm 2 years into this now, but I don't have that, like, just need to grab the success right away. And I don't consider myself anywhere near successful or where I want to be. But at the same time, there's peace in it. And I also have faith, where I didn't have that more so in sport. It's crazy. But I think, like you said, some things need to happen to kind of set the dinner table.
Yeah, well, I think that's how we get to faith. I've thought about this a lot in in what faith, in a religious sense, even too. I've thought to myself, and I've had conversations with a lot of people I've worked with over the years about this aspect in faith around their religions. Now, this doesn't have to, I know it's going to be hard to wrap your head around this sometimes, but if you can just think of it as faith and in the pursuit of faith, well, what is faith? Well, we can step out of religion and just look at this as a whole of the concept of faith. But it's like, in order to create a pursuit to the actuality of faith, meaning like I have the actual perfection of faith, which you would never get because you can't.
No.
So that's hard in itself, because our brains want to justify everything.
Yes.
So we need to quantify everything. We need to objectify everything. We need to justify who we are. We need to tell you who we are. And then we become wrapped up in the identity. You're a first round pick and you are whatever you are, you know, and this is how much whatever.
Right.
But in terms of having faith, that would be a connection, in my opinion, intuitively. In the pursuit from the birth to death cycle would be, how much of me can I meet through this vehicle, this mind and this body? And I think the hardest part about professional sports, and this is as your friend speaking, what I love about what you're doing in 2 years from that pinnacle peak to where you are now is, dude, you never stopped. Like, yeah, you probably have some pains and some traumas around those experiences, but like, you have pursued yourself ever since I met you. And you were using sport as the classroom to the vehicle, the mind and the body. So if hockey was this platform that exposed you to you, and then it gave you this bigger engine, this better car, this shinier vehicle, and now you're making art from a whole new level of perspective.
Yep.
And you're constantly processing and reflecting on the current mind and body vehicle that you're using to navigate everything. And you have these histories of sport where you're like, okay, that didn't work when I was trying to grip that so hard I couldn't go out and perform.
Yep.
So I can't do that anymore.
No.
And so it's like, is it hockey or is it life?
Yeah.
From birth to death.
Right.
And we get caught in thinking it was just hockey. It was just baseball. This is what my career was. And this is where, unfortunately, this is where you see like 60-year-old former athletes who are just still being the athlete.
Yeah.
And that's a pain. You see that a lot. You see that all the time.
Yeah.
And that's held and concealed in the identity of a character that they once played. And you lose the expansion of self.
Yeah, 100%. And the one thing I wanted to comment on there was when I was in Switzerland and I kind of felt my athletic side, or, you know, just wanting to make that transition, and the athlete and myself just kind of dying, and just felt disconnected between my mind and my body. I just remember specifically thinking, like, I have all the prerequisites already. Like, I've gone to school, and my school was the locker room.
Yes.
That's what it was.
Yes.
And that's where I learned all my terminology. I always banked little different things. Yeah, I would come up with some of the stuff myself, but it was always in the conversation. What were the one-liners? What were the jokes? What was the cadence? What were the funny stories from the coaches? How can I relate that all back into life and make art from it? And I kind of was like,
that's beautiful.
It was almost like my graduation. I felt, I was like, oh, I'm here. This is, I think this, 9-year, 8-year program, I think it's over. I think I got everything I needed, and I could continue on and stay in school. But I think at this time I am ready to graduate and build on something where I still have time, and I'm young, and I'm have this energy to me, and not hang on to something like you said. And yeah, I just think hanging on to something. Now listen, there's guys that have been wildly successful,
no doubt,
unbelievable Hall of Fame careers, different things. But if you made a lot of money and you're kind of just become what you were in the past, it's the same stories at the golf round. It's the same stories at the bar. They're funny, but I was never one of those guys that wanted to tell the same stories 20 times a week or whatever it is, or a year. It's just like, I want to contribute to the now and the present and the future while I'm still here, because I think that is ultimately the growth and evolution of not only yourself, but just in life, man.
Yeah, and I think you have to have faith to go after that expansion.
Yes.
So how do you hear your own faith, if you can even put that into words? How do you hear yourself?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I lean on my intuition. I lean on the voice in my head. And I think more than ever, it's like that direction or that calling, that compass, whatever is in you, we all have it. Just lean into that way versus the other way. And it's not like it's the easiest thing to do in the world either,
No.
because that creates anxiety or fear or different things within that. But I think like leaning into that, Harv, is something I've really tried to do. And, whether it's working with you or different people, shout out to Coach Dar, if you're listening. I call her baby Jesus, right?
Yeah,
for people that don't really know who she is, it's Darlene Santor, and she's a great mental skills coach. And I worked with her and even just, my parents are a great foundation. So just trying to lean into different things of giving you that, that intuition and what you want to do. And I think that's where the playground and the freedom is, really.
Yeah. So then can you talk about that and where you're at now? Because you go from this structured, because when you're an athlete, everything's put in front of you,
Yep.
right? You know when to go to training camp, when the itinerary is already done. This is where I go. This is how I do it.
Turn your brain off.
Yeah, I got to sign something. They take care of you. And now your brain is entirely, I got to imagine the mass. You went from certainty to mass uncertainty.
Yes.
And so how have you, over the last 2 years, kind of like created a groove inside of that, I suppose?
I try to set a schedule accordingly, but in that, I like to give myself time to do different things, whether it's writing or podcasting. I mean, right now, Harvey, I got crazy amount of stuff going on. I got my company Butter Golf, so what I'm running day to day in terms of the operational, the shipping and the packaging. I do all that myself. My mom helps me out a little bit, as well as my sister. So especially at this time of year, right around, the holidays, that's crazy.
Yeah, you're buzzing.
So I got to structure a few days for that. And then I have Missing Curfew, which is a podcast I've joined within the last year of a couple different hockey guys, and Scotty Upshaw and Shane O'Brien, Scotty Upshaw being a former teammate. And then I have my other podcast, Live in 5, I do with a college buddy, Gage Osmus, who was a national champion at North Dakota. That's when I really started to get my reps in last year, being my first year out of hockey. So we'll rip that once a week with a guest. And then Hockey Night in Scottsdale with my buddy, the Heat Daddy, a.k.a. Robbie Gucci. And we do 3 shows a week for that, on top of live shows where we go into different cities and kind of rip it stand-up comedy style. So, yeah, man, I'm just throwing everything at the wall right now and just seeing what sticks, but ultimately getting reps like we talked about and just enjoying it, man. And it's been a lot of fun. Like, I don't really know what all of that's going to look like within the next year, 2 or 5, but I just try to do what's in front of me that day and ultimately bring the heat and bring that original taste that I think I do have, and just keep pounding pavement and really zone in on, not really worrying about anything outside of that, but just the task at hand at the day, it's presented. And I think that's been the biggest transition for me outside of sport, is this gets me so much more into flow versus I would leave practice at 11 a.m. or whatever it is. And then I would just be wondering, am I going to get sent down? Am I going to get called up? Where am I going to play next year? All this stuff, where now my focus just seems way more pinpointed. And I think, different lifestyle things for sure on the outside that have cleaned it up. But yeah, man, I just try to set a schedule at the start of the week and kind of rip from there and do my best. And some days are 8-hour days. Some days are 15, you know how it is.
Oh yeah.
It's, you're never really off.
No. So do you find yourself in loops sometimes where you're feeling some friction or an obstacle, and you see your former self where you kind of still have that gripping feeling and you've had to work through that and let it go? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Or just like feel different stressors, or
like wanting something to be a certain way. Yeah,
wanting something to be some way, or comparables. That was always the biggest thing in sport. Oh, why is that guy in the NHL and I'm down here? Why did he sign for that? I've signed for this. So now when you get into the content world, you see those other things where you maybe start comparing yourself. It's like, no, man, like none of that matters. Like then I lean back into my faith of, knowing that I'm going to make it, or, knowing I'm going to get to where I want to go, or setting goals and striving for it. And it's not in a cocky way. It's just, you have to have that belief in yourself, and you have to be a little bit delusional, especially as an entrepreneur.
100%. Yeah.
I think that works in your favor. And I think I do have both of that. And I just think anytime I get myself into that comparing state, or gripping the stick, or different fears or anxiety, I just lean back into what it was in hockey, what I learned from. Okay, I'm going to do that differently. And now I transfer my thoughts out of that and get back into the positive.
How did you when you were coming up, Were you always like were you Mr. Hockey and all that stuff?
In terms of a player? Or
Yeah,
just,
like were you always ranked super high?
yeah, I was. Yeah.
So who were you comparing yourself to then? If you were always like the top, you were the comparison.
Yeah, I would compare myself to older guys already
Sure.
in the league.
So you found a way to compare no matter what.
100%. And then maybe I wasn't having as much success as a guy in my draft year that was maybe even drafted lower than me. Now I'm like, wow, like why is he there? Or, you know, how did he get that contract? All those different thoughts. And that was such negative energy that didn't really mean anything. But on the outside, and especially when you're immature and different things, people are even asking you like, oh yeah, he's in the NHL, you're not. I'm like, yeah, I mean, a lot of different things go into it: system, timing, where that team is at with their state of their depth. Are they a playoff team? Are they a non-playoff team? You know how it goes in sport. There's so many different things that people don't understand. But then I would just hone that in as negative energy, and it would affect my play, you know, to the point of sometimes it'd be like, you know, just completely like almost like shut down on the inside where you're still there present as a person, but just letting it affect you to ultimately what we were talking about, kind of getting to that point where the wick is getting shorter and you're burnt out at 29 or 30. I'm like, fuck, I got nothing else to oh, you know, and I felt like I worked hard enough. I was good enough, but I didn't have the wherewithal in me to withstand that stressors at the time.
Do you think that your artistic endeavors, I call them second lives, just from my
for sure.
I feel like I know I played sports. But that person is, as far as I'm concerned, it died.
Yes.
I've grieved it, and I can't really remember it. Which is kind of what you said already about your relationship with hockey. Do you think that I don't want to go too deep in that because I don't want to lose this thought on what you were just saying that made me think about it. Do you think that the last 2 years, your artistic endeavor, and let's just talk pure development. That's where I'm framing this from. So it's nothing to do with success or material, like whatever you're doing business wise, just from you. Do you think that you went so extrinsic for so long in your life, so external, and that's where you grabbed a hold of all of your decisions? So like if I compared myself to this person, at least it motivated me for X amount of months. Or if I felt like I had to prove this, it could motivate me. And then all of a sudden your candle went out and you burn out. And then you were left in this explosion. I keep using that word of you had exhausted the external pursuit. And then you were left with this, who am I?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Even it's crazy to say, but I think after I was done playing hockey for maybe even a year, like I had to look in the mirror sometimes and be like, is that me? You know, like I'm like, what is going on? You know, like what am I? Who am I?
Oh man.
You're like, you're going through like, you're kind of, I mean, you're grieving. You're that person is dying. You're a little bit depressed. You're also anxious at the same time.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, I keep going back to what because we've had a lot of in-depth conversations over the years. And I remember you're like the best piece of advice I could give you is this Jim Carrey quote. You know, if you're depressed, it's in the past.
Yeah.
And if you're anxious, you're living too far in the future.
Yeah.
So you got to find that middle ground of that river of the present. And it took me a while, not a terrible amount of time, but
it takes a minute.
Yeah. It takes a minute for a hot minute for sure.
Yeah.
To kind of figure out, all right, like that person is now not you. What are you and what are you going to give to this world? And that's where you look internal. And man, like once I did that, like my writing I've always loved to write. My writing is way better. If I'm preparing for a show and I'm writing jokes or even writing just stupid, funny tweets that are kind of long form and people really get a kick out of, that part of me is heightened to another level. It's like, did this guy do a Hooked on Phonics lately? Or, you know, what's going on? Like this guy can kind of write for going to North Dakota.
That's got to be that.
Like, you know, put your name on the ACT, just show up, you're in.
That's got to be. I was the same way, dude. I had to take the ACT twice because the first time I took it, I couldn't get into college.
For sure.
That has got to be the exploration of that has got to be what has driven you so beautifully over the last couple of years and where you're at now, because I would imagine every day feels somewhat like a mystery because you're finding out more things of you that you didn't even know that existed. And if that's inaccurate, tell me. But what I would say one of the hard parts, and obviously both of us have many dear friends who are pro athletes, and they're going to make these transitions. And I know we're harping on this, but this happens in everybody's lives. This would be what I would imagine parents having their kids go off to college, right? And then now they're empty nesters or whatever. And I think this happens with retirement. And I think this happens when you graduate. I think this happens in so many ways. The athlete is so unique because I think, like I said, you start so young and you pursue it for so long. And then you're exploded in the world. You're at just such a unique level of humanity because you are exposed nationally. You're coming into a lot of money. You have a bunch of status. Like you have just it's a lot. It's a lot. But I would imagine this like exploring phase of yourself and grieving the process of your former self. The mystery of it now has got to be so paradoxical to what you're used to that it probably was scary in the beginning, but now it's got to just be euphoric.
Yeah. And I think initially it's humbling and you feel a sense of gratitude in this every day you go. And I just think not only is it euphoric, it's just, I'm a curious guy.
100%.
And so are you.
Yeah.
And exploring the unknown with nothing, as I would like to say, nothing but your own chin and yourself. And obviously you have a support system out there, but it's really you on this journey as one. It's crazy, man. It's like, okay, like every day is something different, where before a lot of it was predictable in a sense. And just the characters you meet outside of hockey too.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?
In sport it's cool, man. Like this past weekend I was hanging out with, a bunch of hockey guys, but in a sense of a lot of different people. And one of those guys was Cuba Gooding Jr., Rod Tidwell, one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'm shouting, "Show me the money, Jerry," across the bar at this guy. And, he's loving it. So just like different like characters that or life brings you. And, it's wild, man. And it makes you realize how big the world is outside of whatever niche you've been in for so long. And I think that's the coolest part, because not only do I love learning about that, like hockey guys are always going to be, I love them. Family, right? And, just
baseball for me,
right.
It's family.
But outside of that, out of that realm, you just realize like how interesting in different avenues are of life. It's crazy.
So do you think that you've drawn some confidence from exploring your curiosity on as being you? Because now you're meeting people as you now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. They're like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
He just said that? Yeah, baby. What's up?
Yeah.
But it's just, it's who you are. And it's like, I just think like, it's like, you get out of that and you just like, it's like you're spreading your wings and now you're really flying. It's like before it's kind of like, you're just in that lane of different things. And like I said, I'm only 2 years into this, and I generally wake up every day. I'm like, wow, this, something new, or, maybe something you thought was expected you were going to do, but then you meet this person, you have lunch, you have a beer, whatever it is, or you connect on a phone call. It's pretty crazy how just things like just different things pop up where, whether it's opportunity or just simply meeting someone. It's cool, man. So we're still from the vein of results. We still came from that craft. How do you measure your success now? Because obviously I would have to imagine, I haven't seen it in a while, but I have to imagine you've obviously tried to make yourself better at being an entrepreneur, having retail, doing conversations, doing live, doing podcasts, all these sort of things. So there's still that side of it where like you want to be attached to being good and progressing. Oh yeah.
But you also want to hold this detachment of like, I'm working internally, I'm understanding myself, I'm exploring the world, I'm curious. I want to walk through life with both of these now, where maybe I might have radically been consumed with this hockey player and this identity, this attachment for a long time. It almost crushed it. It ended me at the end. I burned out. But now I have this new level of wisdom. How are you quantifying your results now? Like, how are you justifying? Is this making sense?
Yeah, no, 100% it is. It's justifying your results and still.
Like, how are you getting better and knowing you're getting better the way you want to get better?
Right. As a highly competitive guy, like at the end of the day, like we all want to make money.
You want to kill it. Yeah.
We all want to, have this gratitude of, like you've made it, or just, having that's not even the justification of what people think, but it's like, oh, like, look at what he did, like it's like, wow, like, but that's for yourself. It's like, basically for me, it comes down to like wanting to prove people wrong, Harvey. It really does. And, expanding who you are as a human, not only for, myself, but just, being able to showcase that and give back and do different things and just proving to yourself like, wow, like, you did do that. So for me, kind of related to just climbing back up the mountain, man. Like I went up the mountain on the one side, that was sport. Didn't last probably as long as I wanted at the top. Turned around, came down. Now I got to go on the other trail back up. And this is what that is. And I think the way I'm able to kind of, show myself I am getting better, or, having the justification of getting better is just taking simple steps. So for the live shows, it would be just having better jokes, getting more laughs, being more prepared, being able to really, get out there and improve my, in a sense, public speaking abilities. And then in the podcast, getting more reps, butter golf, more customers, more revenue generated, having more guys in the league wearing it, just more recognition that way. Yeah. And climbing back up that mountain. And I know it's going to take a little bit of time. And, sometimes I think we all do, we get a little antsy. It's like, you want that, quick success. But now, like we talked about before, it's just, I understand that this is a process. And as long as I have the energy and the faith, which I have both,
beautiful.
I know it's, not that it's going to be $1 billion industry, but I know that, it's going to work. And if it doesn't, I can pivot to something else too.
Yeah, yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's two things in that I wanted to highlight. Is one, the mountain aspect, because this is something I've toyed with a lot over the last couple of years. And I found myself, when my former business, I found myself falling into the same traps that I had as a baseball player. And I was getting so obsessed with more. I did not like that. And I wanted to let it go and move on, which I'm happy I did. But I also have thought over the last couple of years about the metaphor of the mountain, meaning, is there ever an end to the mountain, or is the point to just climb the mountain? And I want to ask you, I want your thoughts on that, because I think a lot of times we move through life and we go, if I get to college, that's the first mountain. Once I get to that mountain, I'll be happy. And then you realize that doesn't work. Yeah. So you go, okay, I got to get to the draft. Once I get to the draft, then that doesn't work. Then you make your first million and you're like, okay, that didn't work. Right. And you keep baselining out. Yep. And after a while, you become obsessed with trying to get to the next mountain because you just experienced a baseline and it was a lie. Mm-hmm. But then recently, in the last couple of years, I've asked myself, and this goes back to faith. This goes back to the concept of actuality with faith. If I'm pursuing faith and I'm trying to just get to the actual aspect of faith where I'm fully in tune with myself while I know I'm riding the vehicle, the mind and the body, would that consist of me just walking up the mountain? It's just that. Yeah. What's your take with that philosophy or that concept of now your pursuit is just the mountain? There is no, even if you get $1 billion, right, you're going to want 2 billion.
Yeah, I know, 100%.
So, because I feel like we experience that as performers.
Absolutely, we do. And the thing is it's like the guy that wants the Ferrari. He gets the Ferrari. Well, now he needs 2. He's the guy who's got the 10,000 square foot house. Well, now he needs the casita. That's another 10,000 square feet. And actually, I want to sell this. And I want to move up the mountain over here in Paradise Valley. Right. But the thing for me is in a sense of, we all want to be wildly successful. That's just the competitive nature of wanting different things. But for me, I think, honestly, I do I want all of that.
100%.
Because, that's
part of it.
That's freedom in that.
Right.
But also, I think the biggest thing for me, man, is like, I want to entertain people and I want to give back and I want to showcase what's going on inside this coconut, whether it's a little fucked up or whatever it is.
Either or.
It's funny, this and that. I just think
you just want to be you, dude.
Yeah, I do. And that's the easiest way to put it, is I just want to connect with people and make them laugh, and also give them something that they can take with them and put in their bag. They really do, man. Like, I just want to be one of one.
Well, and I think that's the paradox, dude. is that you're killing it. You're just going to continue to kill it because you're talented. It's the same thing you were in hockey. Like, you were talented and you were an awesome clubhouse dude. On top of that, you had a ridiculous amount of skill, and you ran it all the way to the highest part of professional sport, and you accomplished it. And I think the hard part is dancing with that level of attachment to wanting those things, while also simultaneously knowing it's not about that. And that is so hard on our brains.
It is.
And that's what you just said, which is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Because being one of one is, you're going to have to climb that mountain until the end.
Yeah. That ain't Mount Everest. That's a stairway to heaven, baby.
Yeah, because you're,
you know what I mean? That
100%. Because you're not a better writer. I firmly believe you're not a better writer if you don't have the experience of what you perceived as a failed awareness in hockey.
Yeah.
But now you're a deeper writer. You have internal stuff that comes out of you that you didn't even know was in you. And then you feel it and you're like, oh my gosh, I had that. And then you see the response of people who gravitate to your words and your humor, and it makes you feel good because you're making people feel good.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's that worth? Is that worth $1 billion? Because it might be worth more than $1 billion.
Yeah. Maybe worth two. Prices are going up per day.
And it might even be more than any money could be.
Yeah.
And that becomes a weird thing too.
Yeah.
Because and that's the gift I think all of us are trying to give to the world, is you're one of one, because you are the gift. That's what we were saying. I don't know if we said this on the podcast. We were talking about that when we were having coffee. Like, you're the art.
Yep.
Like you, Jswish.
Yes.
And that's what makes the art so beautiful. That's what makes it so unique. And I think what makes you separated from a lot of people is that you will be just as nervous as myself and everybody else to take the plunge, but you're taking it.
Yes.
And that's what you've done since I've met you. That kind of goes back to the beginning of the circle about how it was so fun to train you as one of the Mount Rushmore founding fathers, is that I got really lucky to be around someone like yourself who was willing to be on the journey with me.
Yeah.
And that made the job easier as a trainer, because you had somebody who was just uniquely themselves, and I could be uniquely myself because there was like a level of respect there. But I think you've done that even as you played. I think that's what makes you talented, is that you bring so many perspectives that nobody else can get, because I don't think you're playing that game. You're playing the game of the mountain climb. Yep. And as you climb up the mountain, you're taking your hits on the chin.
Yes, I am on the chin for sure.
But you're coming out of them and you're able to tell stories. And I think that being able to connect people through stories is, for whatever reason, I think that's what gravitates me to you and to your language, is that I think you just become relatable.
Yeah. We're just trying to be real dudes. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's, especially now and what day and age we are in, and different things with content, and it's like everyone wants fast success. They want to flex what they probably don't have, overextend themselves in different ways. Like, and you're the same way. Like, you're a pretty simple guy, but in a lot of that, you're very deep too, and you have different layers. I am the same way. It's like, well, man, like I don't really, would I want the sick car? Sure, I'll drive it, but it's not like, I like driving my 96 Bronco more than that, because I think that's a sick car.
My first concept was jealous.
Right.
Exactly.
You know what
jealous
I mean?
of it.
Like, that, to me, that's sick, because I think as myself as kind of an old school or OG type of person, where an older soul, and you're the same way. And that's why I do think we've always had good conversations, whether we're talking on a pod or we're sitting having a coffee or on a hike. This is how we've always talked since I've met you. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool in a sense in that way.
It is, man. I enjoy it. I'm happy you came over. This is a fun, and we can kind of close it out. Let's kind of get to where you're at currently. I think for me, what's really cool having you over here is I've been calling this like the renewal. I've used a lot of these metaphors from my own life of, I did the athlete thing, sure, but also this is kind of like my second go at a podcast, and I did that for a minute. And I use nature as my analogy, how you have to burn the forest to regrow the forest.
Yep.
And how wildfires are actually really important for the ecosystem, and it helps us evolve because it's a death. So you kill off the forest and it's going to regrow stronger.
Yep.
And the roots grow stronger. And that's how I feel now. I'm sort of renewed with a new perspective, a new person. I'm entering back into the content world, and I'm trying my best. I'm just trying to be more of me. I felt like I was being so much of me then, and I feel like I'm even more of me now. And I think that that's the point. We're trying to get to do that. And I was really excited to have you over to do this because, one, there's a comfort zone. 100%. Two, I do that hike. It's fascinating how life works. That hike, I felt like at that moment I was there for you, but ironically, you were there in so many ways for me.
Yeah.
And I think I've been able to watch you go from that hike when you were done playing and continue headstrong into what you're doing. You don't know the ripple effects that has. For me personally, as a bystander, that's been inspiring.
Yeah.
And so now I kind of look at my own self as, okay, well, it's my time to do that for my own self now too. And so I wanted to have you as the first guy that I could kind of chop it up with on the show. And I'm calling it a moment with Mart. I've never said that yet on the show.
I saw it.
A moment with Mart. And so I appreciate you coming on and having a moment with Mart. This was a blast.
Yeah. I just think unless the bag obviously is right. I just don't think we are corporate type of guys. You're such an artist. You know what I mean?
Dude, I got eaten alive in corporate.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? It's just like, you've always been like a modern day philosopher, and every guy that's known you, and especially you've trained with you, they will always say the same things. Like, we go back to our good buddy, Derek Forbert. He'll send me one of your Instagram captions of, a quote of inspiring or just different things. He'd be like, dude, this all sounds good, but what does it actually mean? So I have to kind of try to break it down for him. You know what I mean? Well, Forbes, this is what Harvey's trying to say. And not that I'm saying I'm the smartest guy either, because sometimes I get lost even. And then I'll have to reach out to maybe even you, and I'll comment like, so what does that mean? And you're like, well, the meaning of this is actually nothing. You know what I mean? So like, you simplify it so much, and then I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I guess that he is right. So you've always been that for not only, your baseball guys, but for the hockey guys that you've trained, and everyone that crosses your path, man. You've always been a mentor to me, and just kind of, one of those guys. I was a guy that was, in my family, I was the oldest kid, so I didn't really have an older brother, or, obviously my dad and my mom were great support systems, but there's always, I've always taken, different walks of life and try to build my cabinet of older dudes that I think that can help me along the way. And, if I have to reach out for different things, I like to think I can go into that toolbox and grab the right piece of equipment. And you've always been there for me, brother. So,
appreciate it.
This has been great. And it's obviously an honor, and just to see you and come over and chop it up. We'll have to go on a hike here soon. Fella.
Love you, brother.
Yeah.
What 93.1, what do we got as closing remarks?
Folks, 93.1 DJ Jswish, a.k.a. the People's Insider, reporting live here from North Scottsdale. A moment with Mart. We'll be right back, but that was a hell of a show. Harvey Martin, Jswish, the People's Insider. Folks, until next time.
That's beautiful, brother. I got nothing. Cheers.
Mic drop, eh?
Phenomenal.